Hello everyone, greetings from the Servant of Nero, AJ here, with a return to a Horde faction for this series, this time the seemingly random admixture of stuff employed by the Blackclads. There's less of a set of themes with the forces of Circle, though they certainly exist, even if equivalents are more expansive in other factions. At least, this is the way it strikes me, personally, because of the greater incidence of seemingly random construct warriors and the impression of a lesser degree of uniformity among its troops, even if this may not truly be the case. I will admit, however, that what follows shows a more distinct bias towards how I feel the Circle's hierarchy is, which I will gladly handwave aside as an in-world character's perspective of relative ignorance. The Circle Orboros is a strange organisation, if one may describe them in such terms, and their forces are similarly strange in being a combination of forces which, at first blush, have no real place in being associated with each other in such a manner. The tribes, peoples, and cults which the Druids can call upon are not what one might call natural allies, and were it not for their common belief in the Devourer Worm, perhaps even then they might happily make war upon each other. Much less so than any other force which vies for primacy in Amoran, the warbands and strength of arms which the Circle Orboros can deploy follow no pattern which I might make out beyond the simplest groupings of tribal warbands. And while they would prefer the extent of their influence to be a secret, given who they treat with, even the Druids realise this is a foolish endeavour. Instead, they allow their association with such groups to be an open secret, a source of fear, terror, and nightmares to the people of civilization, making little effort to keep it hidden while making sure their real secrets remain away from prying eyes, such as mine on occasion. Notably, and unlike all other vying powers of Amoran, there appears to be little by way of apparent cooperation among the various groups which fall under the influence of the Druids, though quite how strictly the senior echelons of the Blackclads adhere to their spheres of dominion is a matter beyond my knowledge. From diluted rumours which reach cultist chieftains and vassal shamans, the politics of the Circle Orboros are a murky affair at the best of times. Not quite as cutthroat as scorn politics, but no less scheming or rife with the arrogance of the ambitious. Perhaps the most common, reliable, and most commonly encountered of the Circle's human forces are the small companies of warriors drawn from the many tribes which swear loyalty to the Druids, and serve by protecting key locations throughout the dominions. They refer to themselves as the Wolfspawn, and are perhaps the closest to what a civilized Immerese individual might call specimens of soldiery. While their equipment and trappings suggest this, they are a militia second, cultists to the Devourer first. The most prevalent forms of fighting among them are as spearmen or skirmishers, and using tactics best suited to surprise attacks from the forests followed by quick withdrawals, making them impossible for pursuers to track, even those who are familiar with the woodlands into which the Wolfspawn seemingly melt. In a reflection of the more parochial nature of the followers of the Devourer, the Wolfspawn are the most technologically advanced of all the groups which obey the will of the Druids, but it may still be seen as thoroughly primitive compared to even the most backwater of rural Khadoran villages. But this is merely a reinforcing indication of the Wolfspawn cultists' intent to eschew all of modern society's trappings, taking for themselves only that which lets them serve their purpose and no more. Though I cannot say this with any further authority than as an observer looking in towards the alien goings-on of the tribe. Perhaps this may explain their embrace of the spear and crossbow, but not the firearm and steam armour. Needless to say, their armourers, metalsmiths, and arbalisters are more than competent enough to produce equipment of a quality capable of competing with what is produced by the nations of the West, though that may also be down to the competence of those who wield and carry such arms and armour in the first place. And they are not without ability to innovate, for the double crossbow is used by few outside the Wolfspawn tribes and enterprising mercenaries. As to the cleft spears and swords, they may certainly be different, but I'm not entirely sure what advantages in battle they confer. No matter one's judgment of them, and though the Wolfspawn do only fill the lowest rank and file of the Circle Orboros' presence on the battlefield as far as the Druids are concerned, it is difficult to question their loyalty to the organisation and the effectiveness with which they fulfil their intended purpose, even if it be only to die amidst bloodshed and destruction. And true to their name, they have tamed the lesser wolves of the world to accompany and attend them. These creatures can serve as support in battle, and even mounts in rare cases. Some cultists, however, are more than merely sworn to wolf, and aspire to be wolves, literal as well as figurative, for lack of a better way of putting it. The wolves are perhaps the most notorious of these, but as they are treated more as the war beasts of the Druids than soldiers, a simple reference to them here should suffice, given their background as humans, or distantly descended from them, as in the case of the pureblood warpwolves. There is a weaker form of the potion and ritualistic magic which transforms man into warpwolf, however, and those cultists within the wolf-sworn tribes who imbibe this become a lesser warpwolf, as it were, known as the warp-born skinwalkers, who acquire some of the strength of a warpwolf, but sacrifice a part of it to retain more control over themselves as well as their humanity, or rather human intellect, since many would have few, if any, qualms about trading their humanity fully for their cult's ends. Perhaps just as fearsome as the skinwalkers are those whose ancestors were once human, but have long since turned into something else. Though they may look human, at least superficially, however vaguely depending on your point of view, this similarity in physiology, for only some of the time at that, is more or less the only thing in common between Tharn and the humans of the civilized world. This extends even to the wolf-sworn tribes with whom they share adulation for the devourer worm. The Tharn abandoned their humanity millennia ago, and through the rise and fall of the Mulga Confederation, which came to prominence under Horfagnir's leadership. Despite his defeat, though, and conversion of most Trollkin Creoles to the worship of Dunya, the Tharn never wavered from their adherence to the ways of the Devourer. The passing of dozens of generations of these people has rendered them much more bestial than civilized for their ways of life, be it within their tribes, when they go to war, or how they conduct what passes for worship, has barely changed in all this time. Only their numbers dwindled, thanks to the withering curse which ravaged their fertility, meaning the threat they posed to civilization was never so severe as to warrant a military campaign against them, as was carried out during the spread of the Menite faith in the north. But with its recent breaking, rumoured to be orchestrated by Morvana the Autumn Blade, Tharn warbands once more became a peril to the peoples of Western Moran, and it did not take long before rulers and governments were compelled to take them seriously. The Tharn are much more widespread than one might expect, though, and while all are worshippers of the Devourer, not all swear fealty or are influenced by the Blackclads. This is perhaps fortunate, for if nothing else, it means their reach is not so all-encompassing as they would like anyone, including themselves, to believe. The most notable tribe not under the sway of the Circle Orboros can be found in the Crixian archipelago, who follow the Devourer in the form of a great shark. Details about this tribe are unsurprisingly sparse. More relevantly, the Tharn are a very primal race in general, but one would do well not to underestimate their strength or their instincts and predators' prowess, for they can hide amongst the woods and forests and plan an ambush of sophistication which matches anything the finest tacticians of the West can devise. Unlike their human peers of the Wolf-Sworn, theirs is a simple technology, using weapons of wood, stone, and unworked metal, but it is of similar effectiveness. A Tharn's superhuman strength and resilience, combined with a hunter's precision, more than makes up for their weapons' primitiveness. Likewise, their magic is not a tool to be taken lightly, for zeal in the Devourer manifests in blood frenzies and murderous rampages, which cut a bloody swathe across battlefields. Combining all the aforementioned into a cohesive force with a united cause is no mean feat, and we, the civilized of Emoran, irrespective of race, are fortunate this is not a simple task. Nevertheless, the Druids of the Circle Orboros, these Blackclads, form a point of commonality among the disparate arms of that organization's fighting forces. However, even amongst themselves, the Druids are not necessarily a particularly homogeneous group, for they are not a discriminating order provided belief in the Devourer and signs of the wilding are present. Secretive to a fault, the Druids are seen as, and act as, the facilitators, rulers, and the keepers of law among the followers of the Devourer. Though the Wolf-Sworn, Tharn, and other cultist tribes swear loyalty to the Blackclads, I believe they know little of their true motivations and goals, for the Druids seem to care little for worship or zeal per se. Instead, theirs is a duplicitous form of guidance, one can say, and though they may consider themselves as performing a greater good, they are not inclined towards persuading the rest of the world that they are doing so. Tellingly, even the Tharn kings and Wolf-Sworn chieftains hesitate before ignoring the words of the most lowly of Druids. Such is the relationship shared among them. Contrary to expectations, though, the Druids have a strict hierarchy which all, irrespective of their ambitions, skills, and connections, must nominally adhere to. Because of this, and the low overall quantity of Blackclads, it seems uncommon for them to join battle as cohesive units, instead doing so as overseers for their constructs or in support of their warlocks. Even so, units of Druids, whether on foot or mounted on Skarovic mountain goats, have been known to assemble. As to the hierarchy itself, Wilders are the newest among the Druids, who often mingle with cultists of all stripe and origin, through to their seniors among the Blackclads. They act as low-level coordinators, liaisons, and messengers for the mundane matters. And with each step up the ladder of authority comes more responsibility, marked, as I am led to believe, by the amount of territory and the number of subordinate druids they oversee. At the peak is a triumvirate of omnipotence, a rank or title I have only heard spoken softly and rarely. The extent of their oversight, though, is beyond my knowledge, but one may gather it spans all of Imoran. The last facet of the Circle Orboros' military, which is worthy of note, is perhaps the most irksome as far as the civilized of Imoran are concerned. Though given what has come before, this may strike some as merely an instance of the normally abnormal. More than any other vying power of Imoran, the Druids harness the more chaotic aspects of nature to their whim, even if observers may believe there is little which is inherently natural about it. Like the construct warbeast, wolds, lesser creatures can be crafted to fight on the Druids' behalf. They do not require the same extent of blood, power, and ritual to create, but by the same count, they have little of the wold's longevity, capabilities, or what may pass for autonomy. Consequently, their value on the battlefield comes also in how disposable they are, and how much their destruction, voluntary or otherwise, can cost an enemy. Mannequins and woldstalkers are deadly things for what first impressions may give, but manifest this deadliness in ways alien and unfathomable to nearly every soldier who have the misfortune to witness them. Worse yet, in the case of the mannequins, even should one succeed in destroying them, their shattered branches can easily reshuffle, rejoin, and reassemble to reanimate more of them. As to the woldstalkers, they are a force multiplier for the controlling druid, a stone ward, as it magnifies the reach and output of their power across the battlefield. And though it takes a notable effort to craft and control them, as druids are of a pragmatic ilk, they always fight so as to allow the opportunity to retreat and construct more if needed. The last warrior, though I hesitate to use this term, is one which begs most questions, but for which few among the civilized have answers, and they are the shifting stones. Where they stand now, they may not necessarily stand at any other point in time, while their appearance may soon be accompanied by something far less unassuming. The manner in which these waystone-like structures function is a matter of curiosity and peril, even if there is evidence linking them to the ley lines which run throughout the continent. But quite how they exploit this is a question I have no answer for. Even after recounting all of the aforementioned, despite being only a mere summary, I am confident this is but a fraction of what the Druids can dispose of as they work towards whatever goals they may have. There is a great deal of power which exists known only to themselves, and one may consider it a certainty they will use whatever means to gain advantage. Misdirection is the Circle Orboros' watchword. Of this I am well aware, but as I am neither Druid nor Cultist chief, so am informed by hearsay and observation alone. Thus I have much to learn about them, though it is certain I may never be in a position to do so fully.